In recent times, there have been conversations about the phenomenon termed by some people black fatigue. But these conversations, by my estimation, are framed wrong. They are looking at things in the culture that are most certainly concerning, especially things within black culture that are most certainly concerning that indeed deserve to be evaluated. But they're doing so through a lens that does not actually move us towards the light of truth, nor does it move us towards a healthier civic moral moment that America desperately needs as it struggles to maintain a sense of patriotism and unity amongst its people. So in this video, my friends, we're actually going to explore this phenomenon of black fatigue. I'm going to explain why I believe it is most certainly what I would call a modern sophism, and I'm going to give us a better way of handling and addressing some of the problems that the term tries to solve, but does not have the ability to actually go and investigate. But before that, my friends, I hope all of you are doing well. I am Christian Watson. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoy political and social commentary from a philosophical bent, then I must implore you, please like, share, comment, subscribe, do whatever you can, my friends, to ensure our message is successful. This is a civic conservative project that is pushing towards a civic revivalism in the United States. If you believe, like I do, that the moral character of the United States is worth defending and the principles that founded us, the Enlightenment era principles that founded us, are worth also pushing into the public discourse in the 21st century, then again, please like, share, comment, subscribe. Do whatever you can, my friends. Thank you so much. And now please enjoy the video. So, if you've been on social media recently, you've undoubtedly seen conversations about so-called black fatigue. And if I were to try to muster up a definition of black fatigue, it would be this sense of exasperation and irritation that some people have when it comes to seeing particular portrayals of black people on social media and within the media. Oftentimes, this conversation centers on race, and crime, especially crime. In fact, if you're on Twitter and you see the term black fatigue, you will undoubtedly see it associated with a video of some youths doing something that is criminal and that is bad, and people in the comments saying that this is apparently the fault of all black people for reasons X, Y, or Z, or you will see it posed with some kind of cultural criticism. You may see, for example, a raunchy rap video with a bunch of black folks in it, and then they'll see someone say, oh, this is why I have black fatigue. So there's all kind of different ways this complaint is framed and packaged. But I think all of those different ways are, just like the complaint itself, unfortunately short-sighted in addressing some of the issues that the term itself tries to address. I'm not going to talk about race and crime as much in this video as some others who have covered this topic have talked about it, because you guys can go get that from someone else. But not only that, but race and crime are both symptoms, or rather, crime is a symptom of something. It is not the cause of anything. And if we're going to address any issue, whether it's race, crime, war, peace, whatever, motherhood, fatherhood, I don't care what it is, any political or social issue, we must frame our investigation correctly from the offset. Because if we do not, along the way of trying to find answers, we will undoubtedly fail. Incorrect framing almost always leads to short-sighted, or at worst, incorrect answers. So when addressing the objects of black fatigue, when addressing the irritation that a lot of people are feeling on this particular topic, we cannot frame it in terms of emotionalism. We must frame it first in terms of first principles. And by first principles, I mean those rules and habits that are important for the maintenance of society, number one, and two, the maintenance of proper social relationships. There are three principles here that I think are very important when it comes to this particular topic. Veracity, which is simply an obligation to the truth. Charitability, which is simply being willing to give the devil his due, basically. Being willing to give someone who you doubt, or give someone else a sense of the benefit of the doubt. And being willing to entertain their beliefs, or entertain their behaviors, or understand their behaviors in a way that grants them the benefit of the doubt. And of course, goodwill. Not simply giving the benefit of the doubt, but also willing the good for them, also seeing a sense of benevolence within them, even if eventually that sense of benevolence is dispelled by their actions. You start with goodwill, because with the goodwill, you then have a mindset of addressing them with a certain kind of warmth that paves the foundation for peaceable social relationships. That is precisely why goodwill is very important. These three virtues, primary virtues I call them, rules that society especially needs in order to remain, not just remain intact, number one, but also to remain good. These three virtues produce sober thinking. Because if you are charitable in your thinking, you will recognize your own limits and the limits of your interlocutor as well, and be able to better find the truth, because you're not going to be pushing with any haughtiness, with any kind of arrogance, but instead with this sort of understanding of your limits. If you have goodwill, you're going to be willing to give, again, your interlocutor a sense of benevolence, a sense of understanding, because you're proceeding from that point of benevolence. And if you have veracity, your own biases will not be in the way of you finding truth. Your duty will be to the truth, because the truth has no agenda. Now, when black fatigue is phrased as black fatigue, I see it as an assertion of emotionalism over everything I just mentioned. And the problem with this is very simple, is when you are using your emotions as a standard of engagement, and you are using your emotions as the measure of justice, you are never going to be able to get beyond your finite limits as a person. You're simply going to remain within the confines of your own mind, fighting the demons that you are constantly irritated about. What exactly do I mean by this? Well, when someone says, I have black fatigue, and they then therefore begin to talk about social analysis, make kinds of social analysis on the basis of their fatigue, they are no longer going to be able to look at that particular thing or that particular object of anger in an objective way, or in a way that is going to allow them to understand it. They are going to be trapped within the confines of their anger or their irritation. Now, having irritation by itself is completely fine. Having a kind of fatigue by itself is completely fine, but using that as a standard and foundation for further discovery is nothing more than a dead-end approach that I think does not help the person who has the fatigue, nor does it help the people who the fatigue is directed towards. In this sense, the term black fatigue is a sophism, which is simply defined as an argument that is fallacious and incorrect while seemingly being true, because black fatigue is a rudimentary kind of what is called emotivism. It's emotivism because it assumes that the standard of truth in this case is sentiment, that the standard of truth in this case is emotionalism. But sentiment does not establish correctness, even though sentiment, I think I would argue, is actually the beginning of our road of discovering truth. I'm a believer in moral sense theory, which the great thinkers of my tradition in the Scottish Enlightenment believed was a guide for how we develop our moral understanding, which simply says that, yes, there are certain emotions we have that are quite important in our basic understanding of what is right and wrong, but these emotions must be subordinate to reason. The moment our emotions overtake our reason is the moment the passions have no gateway by which to be stopped, and instead they are just let loose, wild and free, to run roughshod over our thinking and to therefore lead us into a state of blind impulse. Black fatigue, by making it acceptable to view a social phenomenon, a complex social phenomenon, solely through the lens of emotion, is a kind of emotivism that does lead us into a territory of blind impulse and leads us away from civic and moral understanding. Clarity of mind, my friend, is more important than simply affirming our feelings or affirming our sentiments. We cannot allow the tyranny of sentiment to overtake us. And so this modern sophism of black fatigue, we understand that it's flawed, and we understand that there are significant issues at play with it. But what about the problems that black fatigue unsuccessfully tries to address? Well, I do think, and I've been, by the way, one of the more fiercest critics of what is called, quote unquote, black culture, what I would just call a sort of artificial rendering of how a particular demographic in the eyes of some should behave, and also how that demographic should consume information. That artificial rendering has been 100% destructive. I've been someone on this channel that has been critical of rap music, for example, particularly of hip hop and trap music. I made a video about the Super Bowl, about Kendrick Lamar's performance there, because I thought it was an affront to beauty. I've been very critical of gangsterism. I've been very critical of thuggery. I've been very critical of the concept of acting black or acting white. I've been very critical of the identity politics that has flown from a lot of racially based understandings of society. I've been very critical of all of these things. And all of these things are indeed foisted upon the culture, and they're used as excuses to excuse bad behavior. We see them all the time. In fact, if you would even, give me here for a second, whenever a major black celebrity is being brought up for a crime, like P. Diddy, for example, who is undoubtedly a scumbag and undoubtedly an example of malevolence embodied into human form, if you can even call him a human, when he was brought up for charges, there were a chorus of people saying it's the system trying to keep a black man down. When R. Kelly, who was most definitely a predator in the worst ways I can't even say on YouTube, was also brought up for charges, there were people that were defending him on the basis of his race. When an encounter with an officer happens, with a black person, almost always amongst a certain quarter of people, not everyone, but amongst a certain quarter of people, it is assumed that the officer is racist if the officer is white, or if they're black, they are a product of, they have a systematic thinking, a systematic infection in their mind of racism. It's assumed that somehow racism is at play against the black person. This sort of pervasive victim mentality exists. And so if you are someone that is outside of all of this, and you're looking on social media, you're looking on the media, and you see a certain demographic continue to commit crimes, and you're seeing a certain demographic continue to get defended in the same kind of ways, I understand how you might say, oh man, I've got fatigue. But you must understand something, that when you have charitability, your fatigue will become informed by your reason, and it'll also become informed by the necessary limits of your knowledge. While there are serious problems at play here, fatigue and emotionalism are not ways to address them. But not only that, generalizations that lack charitability, that lack context, are also not ways to address them. But not only that, but simply reacting to small sample sizes on the media, in the media, rather than understanding the totality of what the situation is, are also not ways to address the problem. Any social phenomenon must be addressed first by making it a question of values. If you were to look in the 1940s, 1950s, 60s, 70s, Duke Ellington, Nat King Cole, Louis Armstrong, these were the, Chuck Berry, these were the sort of forerunners of so-called, if you could even call it this way, I hate this term, but it's a term that is used, so I'll use it for simplicity, black culture. This sort of classiness, the sort of high scientific practice of music, because jazz is the most scientific and arguably the most beautiful practice of music because it conforms to structure, it conforms to order, it conforms to good sequence, it conforms to the ear, what tickles the ear. This was what was coming out of so-called black culture. And so you really can't say, without having an understanding of history, that this is not a problem of values, it's a problem of genetics or something else. This is fundamentally a problem of reference points. When you grow up in a particular neighborhood and all you see around you is drugs, decay, and gangsterism, and vice is normalized, and you are within this environment and there's nothing else that you see outside of this environment, what's going to happen? Your reference points are going to be limited and your free will is going to be constricted in its possibilities. The reason, the object behind black fatigue is simply a perversion of values, a decay of values that must be addressed by a sort of civic revivalism within America, a sort of rediscovery of the founding generation's moral character that included universally applicable values that all of us as Americans can follow and use to live good lives. Liberty must be ordered towards the right, not the good. The good is subjective, but the right towards rightful conduct. But in order for that to happen, rightful conduct must be popular within the culture. In order for that to happen, the culture must have positive messaging that promotes moral education, that promotes rightful culture. And these things, as history has shown us, can be observed in all demographics. It's simply a matter of making it fashionable without dumbing it down. Black fatigue misses the problem. The problem is not the actions of a particular demographic. The problem is a civic moral decay. And the sooner we bring forth an understanding of what it means to be a good citizen and what it means to be a moral agent in society, the sooner we can all stop having fatigue about this particular issue. And we can see better kinds of behavior pushed. But the more we celebrate mediocrity, the more we celebrate nonsense, the more nonsense and mediocrity I'm afraid we're going to get. We have a choice. I know the choice can be restorationist, it can be good, but for some people, that choice is going to be to remain how they are. But I believe that enough people understand and hear these messages and understand the conditions that can lead to flourishing, they will accept them and they will take them. My friends, like, share, comment, subscribe, do whatever you can to ensure our message is successful. My friends, be sure to join our Discord if you wish to. We are leading a revival in this country. We are leading a civic moral revival that is going to help bring back and reignite the spark of America that made our country unique and great. And if you enjoy philosophy as well, I also encourage you to join our Discord. My friends, study history, study philosophy, remember we're convicted, and please stay pensive.